At exactly 11:47 a.m. on March 3, 2026, a courier stepped into the marble lobby of Silva and Associates on Rua de Prata in Lisbon. The manila envelope in his hands carried a return address that would make 3 governments very uncomfortable. The receptionist, Amara Santos, watched the man approach her desk. 23 years of greeting visitors had taught her to read faces. This one looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Delivery for Senora Rodriguez," the courier said, his voice barely above a whisper. He placed the envelope on the polished surface and backed away as if it might explode. Amara signed the receipt. The courier fled. Inside that envelope sat documents that would unravel a marriage, expose a financial conspiracy, and trigger what palace insiders would later call the nuclear option. But the most shocking detail wasn't the papers themselves. It was the signature at the bottom of each page. A name that appeared on birth certificates, marriage licenses, and Sussex royal trademarks. The same signature that had been quietly transferred to 18 shell companies across 3 European countries since August 2024. While cameras captured her latest charity appearance in California, lawyers in Portugal were executing the final phase of what they called Project Meridian, the systematic extraction of every shared asset from American soil, every trademark, every business venture, every piece of intellectual property that bore both their names. The courier's envelope contained the last piece: authorization to liquidate the Archwell Foundation's European holdings and transfer them to a private trust established in her name alone. She had been planning this for 18 months. He had no idea it was happening. Hi viewers, have you ever discovered someone close to you was planning something major behind your back? But what the courier didn't know, what nobody except 3 people in London knew, was that Princess and had been tracking every transfer, every filing, every signature. The woman known for her silence had been building a case that would destroy more than just a marriage. The envelope in Lisbon was just the beginning. Tomorrow, the real shock would arrive at a different address entirely. The call came at 6:23 a.m. London time. King Charles set down his tea and listened as his private secretary, Jamal Harrison, read from a classified brief marked, "Sovereign Eyes Only." The words struck like hammer blows. Asset stripping, jurisdictional flight, constitutional crisis. "How long has she been moving the money?" Charles asked. 18 months, Your Majesty. The Palace Intelligence Unit estimates £47 million have been relocated through shell companies. Charles walked to the window overlooking the palace gardens. In 3 hours, he would meet with the Privy Council to discuss what legal experts were calling the Sussex Protocols, emergency measures designed for exactly this scenario. The United Kingdom had faced many threats to the crown. None had ever come from within a marriage. "She's not just leaving," Jamal continued, reading from the brief. "She's taking the infrastructure with her. Every partnership, every media deal, every charitable foundation they built together, it's all been quietly transferred to European entities she controls." The king's jaw tightened. £47 million represented more than money. It represented trust, reputation, and the crown's ability to maintain dignity while one of its members executed what intelligence analysts called strategic betrayal. Parliament would demand answers. The media would demand access. The Commonwealth would demand explanations for how someone married into the royal family could hollow out shared ventures without oversight. "What does Princess and recommend?" Charles asked. Jamal flipped to the final page of the brief. "She calls it the nuclear option, sir. Complete financial separation. Immediate cessation of all royal protections. Full disclosure of the asset transfers to Parliament." Charles nodded slowly. His sister had warned them this day would come. Now the countdown had reached 0. The emergency session would convene in 2 hours. By sunset, the monarchy would either contain the crisis or watch it detonate across every front page in Europe. The cameras loved her smile. Standing outside the Children's Hospital of Orange County, she radiated warmth as she handed out books to young patients. The photographers captured every angle: the designer coat, the careful makeup, the practiced gesture of maternal care. Nobody photographed the three lawyers sitting in a conference room 12 miles away in Newport Beach. Keisha Montgomery, senior partner at Montgomery & Associates, spread the documents across the mahogany table. The Portugal residency application was approved this morning, she announced to her clients. Congratulations! You're now legally eligible for EU citizenship within 18 months. Her client smiled the same smile the cameras had captured an hour earlier. And the business transfers? Complete. Archwell Media, Sussex Productions, and the charitable foundation's European operations are now entirely under your control. The trademark transfers were the final step. Keisha handed over a leather portfolio. Everything your husband signed during that stressful week in November has been executed. The documents told a story of surgical precision. While public attention focused on their joint appearances and shared statements, a parallel process had been dismantling every legal connection between them. His signatures, obtained during what she described as a difficult period when he needed support, had converted his ownership stakes into advisory positions with zero financial authority. What about the house? She asked. The Montecito property remains in joint ownership, Keisha replied. However, the mortgage restructure you signed in January placed the debt obligation entirely in his name. If you relocate to Portugal permanently, you retain your equity share while he assumes full liability for the monthly payments. The third lawyer, Marcus Chun, specialized in international asset protection. The shell companies we established, Aurelius Holdings and Iberian Shield, are completely insulated from American divorce proceedings. Even if he discovers the transfers, California courts have no jurisdiction over Portuguese entities. She nodded, already calculating her next move. But what none of them knew was that every document they'd filed, every transfer they'd executed, every signature they'd obtained had been quietly copied and forwarded to a secure office in St. James's Palace. Someone had been watching. Someone had been waiting. The briefing room fell silent as Princess and placed the folder on the table. Project Mirror, she announced to the emergency council session. 18 months of surveillance on the Sussex financial activities. Her voice carried the weight of military precision developed over 5 decades of royal service. The folder contained 127 pages of bank transfers, shell company registrations, and legal filings. Each document told the same story: systematic asset extraction disguised as business expansion. The operation began in August 2024 and continued immediately following their private meeting with divorce attorneys in Beverly Hills. While they presented a united front publicly, she was already establishing European entities to capture their joint intellectual property. Home Secretary Damon Williams leaned forward. How much are we talking about? £47 million in direct transfers. An additional $23 million in intellectual property rights. Every podcast deal, every Netflix partnership, every charitable donation, the revenue streams have been quietly redirected to companies she controls alone. The documents revealed breathtaking scope. Archwell Foundation's European operations had been converted into a private trust. Sussex Productions had been restructured as a Portuguese media company. Even their shared trademarks had been transferred to Shells Incorporated in Dublin and Lisbon. The legal strategy was sophisticated and explained. She obtained his signatures during what her lawyers described as emotional distress periods, specifically, the week following his grandmother's funeral and again during his father's cancer diagnosis. The contracts he signed converted his ownership stakes into unpaid advisory roles. Treasury Secretary Amira Johnson studied the timeline. "She's been planning this since before they announced their California move?" and nodded. "The planning began 18 months ago. The execution started last August. By our calculation, he has approximately 6 weeks of liquidity remaining before the debt obligations she transferred to him become unmanageable." The room absorbed this information with the gravity it deserved. This wasn't just a marital dispute. It was financial warfare against a member of the royal family. And wasn't finished. The most devastating revelation was still coming. The trademark filings arrived like funeral announcements. Between November 15th and December 3rd, 2025, 18 separate applications had been submitted to the European Union Intellectual Property Office. Each one represented another piece of their shared identity being claimed exclusively by her. Sussex Speaks, registered to Iberian Shield Holdings. The Sussex Foundation, transferred to Aurelius Media Limited. Sussex Productions International, claimed by Meridian Trust Portugal. Patent attorney Khalil Roberts spread the documents across his London office desk as he briefed the Palace legal team via secure video call. "She's been systematic about this. Every brand they built together, every charitable initiative, every media venture. She's claiming sole ownership through European subsidiaries. The implications cut deeper than money. These weren't just business assets. They were the architectural foundation of their public identity, their charitable work, their entire post-royal brand. By claiming exclusive ownership, she was legally erasing his contribution to everything they'd built together." "The most concerning filing came last week," Roberts continued. "She's applied for exclusive rights to the Royal Sussex Foundation and Sussex Family Charitable Trust. If approved, he would be legally prohibited from using his own title for philanthropic work." Princess Anne's voice crackled through the secure connection. "Show them the Portugal application." Roberts pulled up a different set of documents. "She's applied for Portuguese citizenship under their Golden Visa program. The investment requirement was met through the property purchases we've been tracking. If approved, she becomes an EU citizen with full protection under European privacy laws." The room understood immediately. European data protection regulations would shield her financial activities from American discovery proceedings. California divorce courts would have limited ability to access records held by EU entities. "There's more," Roberts said, his voice dropping. "The children's trust funds have been restructured. The money is still there, but the administrative control has been transferred to Portuguese trustees she selected. He would need her permission to access funds for his own children's education or medical care." Silence stretched across the video call. They were witnessing something unprecedented. The complete financial dismantling of a royal marriage through international legal maneuvering. But Princess Anne had been preparing for this moment. The counter-strategy was already in motion. The nuclear option was about to be deployed. The leak appeared on page 6 at 3:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Exclusive. Meghan Markle quietly establishes Portugal residency as marriage rumors swirl. The article contained details that only 3 people should have known. The exact address of her Lisbon property purchase, the timeline of her Golden Visa application, and quotes from sources close to the Sussex camp about her European expansion plans. She stared at her phone screen in her Montecito kitchen, her hands trembling. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Portugal residency was meant to remain confidential until after the divorce proceedings began. Her publicist, Zara Thompson, was already fielding calls from 17 media outlets. "They have specifics," Zara reported over speakerphone. "Property values, shell company names, Even the law firm handling your citizenship application. Someone with access leaked everything. The calculated media campaign they'd planned was crumbling. Instead of controlling the narrative through exclusive interviews and strategic reveals, they were responding to leaks that made her look deceptive and calculating. Who else knew about the Portugal plans? Zara asked. The list was short. Her lawyers, her financial advisors, her mother, and Harry, except she hadn't told Harry about the residency application. He still believed Portugal was just a vacation property investment. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Chen, her international asset attorney. Emergency call in 10 minutes. We have a problem. The problem, as Marcus explained, was bigger than a media leak. Someone had been filing freedom of information requests across 3 jurisdictions. Someone had been tracking every document, every transfer, every shell company registration she'd made over the past 18 months. The Portugal government received a formal inquiry from the UK Treasury last week, Marcus revealed. They're questioning whether your golden visa application disclosed all relevant financial ties to British entities. The room spun slightly. If Portugal rejected her citizenship application, she would lose her EU residency pathway. Worse, the investigation could expose the full scope of the asset transfers. But the most chilling detail was yet to come. Someone had been 3 steps ahead of her entire strategy. The red folder landed on King Charles's desk with a soft thud. Princess and stood at attention, her face carved from stone. The Chopard File, she announced. Everything we need to end this cleanly. Inside the folder lay 18 months of meticulous documentation. Bank surveillance reports. International wire transfer records. Shell company incorporation papers. Legal communications between her American attorneys and European associates. Every single financial move had been tracked, copied, and preserved. How did you obtain this? Charles asked, though he suspected the answer. The Palace Intelligence Unit has maintained surveillance protocols on all former working royals since 1987, Anne replied. Standard procedure following the Fergie situation. We simply activated existing monitoring systems. The Chopard File revealed the true scope of the operation. £47 million in direct asset transfers. $23 million in intellectual property theft. $15 million in fraudulent debt restructuring that left Harry personally liable for obligations he didn't know existed. The children's trust funds were the red line, and continued. When she restructured their educational accounts to require her approval for withdrawals, she crossed from marital dispute into financial abuse. Charles studied the timeline. Every signature Harry had provided during emotional stress periods, his grandmother's funeral, his father's cancer diagnosis, his children's hospital visits, had been weaponized against him. Documents he believed were routine financial updates had actually transferred his ownership stakes to entities he couldn't access. The Treasury Secretary has reviewed our findings, and said, under the Royal Succession Stabilization Act of 2019, we have authority to implement immediate asset protection protocols. Charles knew what that meant. The nuclear option. Complete severance of all financial ties. Immediate cessation of security protections. Full parliamentary disclosure of the asset theft. She filed for Portuguese citizenship yesterday, and added, our intelligence suggests she plans to relocate permanently within 60 days. The king reached for his fountain pen. The document before him would trigger the most severe response the monarchy had deployed since Edward VIII's abdication crisis. One signature would end everything. No negotiations. No second chances. No path back to the family she was attempting to rob. The pen hovered over the paper. History was watching. The document arrived by Royal Courier at 9:15 a.m. Pacific Time. Harry signed for the heavy envelope at his Montecito front door, expecting routine correspondence from his father's office. The letterhead read Office of His Majesty, the King Constitutional Affairs Division. Inside, a single sheet of palace stationery and a legal brief marked Sovereign Directive 47B, Asset Protection and Royal Separation Protocol. His hands shook as he read. By authority vested in the Crown under the Royal Succession Stabilization Act of 2019, and upon review of evidence compiled by Palace Intelligence Unit, the following measures are hereby implemented with immediate effect. The words hit like physical blows. Complete financial separation. Immediate cessation of security protections. Full disclosure to Parliament of unauthorized asset transfers totaling £70 million. Activation of International Financial Crime Unit investigation. But the most devastating revelation waited in paragraph 7. Evidence presented demonstrates systematic asset extraction through 18 shell companies established across European Union jurisdictions, executed through fraudulent documentation and emotional manipulation during periods of family crisis. They knew everything, every transfer, every shell company, every forged signature, every lie he'd been told about routine business restructuring and tax optimization strategies. The document included a timeline that made his blood freeze. While he grieved his grandmother, she was incorporating Aurelius Holdings in Dublin. While he supported his father through cancer treatment, she was transferring trademark ownership to Portuguese entities. While he celebrated their children's birthdays, she was restructuring their trust funds to require her exclusive approval. His phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer. Emergency meeting. 1 hour. Bring everything. But there was nothing left to bring. Every shared asset, every joint venture, every piece of their life together had been quietly stolen and moved beyond his reach. The palace document concluded with words that would haunt him forever. Subject individual has forfeited all claims to royal consideration through systematic betrayal of trust and deliberate financial warfare against a member of the royal family. The door to his old life had just slammed shut. Forever. The phone call came at midnight. She answered on the first ring, knowing it was over before hearing the words. Her mother's voice trembled through the international connection. The story breaks in 4 hours. Full disclosure. Parliament. Everything. The BBC had received a complete briefing from Downing Street. Sky News had copies of the asset transfer documents. The Telegraph was preparing a front-page investigation titled The Sussex Financial Conspiracy: How a Royal Marriage Was Systematically Hollowed Out. They have recordings, her mother whispered. Phone calls between you and the lawyers. Video conferences about the shell companies. Everything you thought was protected by attorney-client privilege. The European privacy protections she'd counted on meant nothing when the evidence came from British intelligence services. The Palace Intelligence Unit had been recording everything for 18 months.
She walked to her bedroom window, looking out at the California darkness. In 6 hours, the world would know the truth. The systematic theft, the emotional manipulation, the fraudulent signatures obtained during family tragedies. Her phone buzzed with messages from her crisis management team, all saying the same thing. There was no defense for this. No spin that could explain away £70 million in stolen assets. The Portugal residency application had been rejected. The Golden Visa program didn't accept applicants under criminal investigation. The EU citizenship pathway was closed. At 12:47 a.m., she received one final message from her London legal team. Palace has activated nuclear protocols. Complete severance. Permanent separation. Constitutional protection removed. Criminal referral to International Financial Crime Unit. She set down the phone and walked to her suitcase. The private jet would leave at dawn, but there was nowhere to run. Every account frozen. Every asset seized. Every bridge burned. Princess and had been right. You cannot build a personal kingdom using the stones of a broken institution. The last text came from Harry. I trusted you with everything. Our children will read about this someday. The bedroom door closed with a soft click. For the first time in years, the palace was quiet. The morning papers told the story in devastating detail. Royal robbery. How Meghan Markle stole £70 million from the crown dominated every front page across Britain. The investigation revealed 18 months of systematic asset theft, fraudulent documentation, and emotional manipulation that shocked even experienced royal reporters. Parliament convened emergency sessions. The Metropolitan Police opened criminal investigations. International law enforcement agencies began tracking shell companies across 3 continents. But the most powerful response came from an unexpected source. At 2 p.m. London time, Prince Harry released a single statement through his legal team. I have been the victim of the most calculated financial betrayal in modern royal history. I trusted someone with my family's future, and that trust was weaponized against everything I hold sacred. The palace remained officially silent. Princess and strategy had worked perfectly. No royal statements, no media appearances. Just the evidence presented methodically to the appropriate authorities. By sunset, every major news organization had confirmed the same conclusion. This wasn't just a marriage ending. It was the complete financial destruction of one of the most famous couples in the world. The children's trust funds were secured under emergency court orders. The stolen intellectual property was frozen pending criminal proceedings. The Portuguese properties were seized as proceeds of crime. She had gambled everything on a plan that seemed brilliant in Beverly Hills conference rooms. But she had underestimated the one force that never forgives and never forgets: institutional memory. The crown had survived wars, revolutions, and constitutional crises. It would certainly survive one person's ambition. Can loyalty ever be bought back once it has been sold? The royal family faces this question as they rebuild trust shattered by someone they welcomed into their most sacred circle. What do you think happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness? Share your thoughts below. Your perspective might inspire others facing similar betrayals. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss the stories that reveal how power really works. Tomorrow, we'll uncover the document Harry's lawyers found hidden in the Montecito vault, and why it changes everything we thought we knew about this case. The truth always surfaces. The question is whether it surfaces in time.